The conflict between Russia and Ukraine has been ongoing for some time. In 2022, Russia started a large military action in Ukraine. This has caused many problems for people in both countries and other parts of the world. Many people have been hurt or have had to leave their homes. Cities and towns have been damaged. The relationship between Russia and some Western countries is now more difficult. Recently, there was a suggestion from the United States about stopping the fighting, a ceasefire. Russia's leader, Mr. Putin, said that Russia is interested in this idea in general. President Putin told reporters that a news conference on the 13th of March in the Kremlin, after talks with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, the idea itself is correct, and we certainly support it, he said. However, he also said that any ceasefire needs to solve the main reasons for the conflict to make sure peace lasts. There are many important details that need to be agreed upon. This situation is complex. Many countries are involved, such as Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and countries in Europe. It is not clear what will happen next. There are different ideas about how to stop the fighting and what the future will look like. This video will look at the different parts of this situation and try to understand what is happening. 2. The battle for Kursk. Kursk is a region in Russia that became important in the conflict. Ukraine entered this area of Russia some time ago. This action had several reasons. First, Ukraine wanted to show that Russia was not safe and that the war could reach Russian land. Second, Ukraine wanted to show that Russia's threats were not always real. Russia had suggested it would do very serious things if Ukraine attacked Russian territory, but this did not happen. Third, and maybe most importantly, Ukraine wanted to use this land as something to bargain with in future talks. If there were talks about land, Ukraine could use Kursk as a point to negotiate. At first, Ukraine took control of a large area, about 1,300 square kilometers in Kursk. However, Russia started to fight back strongly. Russia says it has taken back control of much of this area, including a town called Suja. Now, Ukraine controls a much smaller part of Kursk, less than 200 square kilometers. Russia's counterattack became stronger when North Korean soldiers joined the fight. This was a big change in the war because North Korea is also a country with nuclear weapons. The North Korean soldiers helped Russia push back Ukrainian forces. They had more soldiers, and this helped them to overcome some Ukrainian defenses. Another important thing that changed the battle was when the United States stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine for a short time. Intelligence is important information about the enemy. Without this information, Ukraine was fighting in Kursk without knowing what was happening around them. It was like fighting without being able to see properly. Later, the U.S. started sharing intelligence again, but by then, Russia had already made progress, and Ukraine had lost ground. Around this time, President Putin of Russia visited Kursk. He wore military clothes, which is unusual for him. He went to a command center in the Kursk region. This visit was symbolic. It was the first time Putin went to this area, showing that he recognized that Ukrainian forces had entered Russian territory. He went there when it looked like Russia was winning back control of Kursk. This visit was seen as Putin trying to show strength and to appear as a leader who is winning. Russia's actions in Kursk were described as a quick and strong attack. Russia aimed to remove Ukrainian forces completely from this area. The battle for Kursk became a significant event in the conflict, showing changes in the war and the involvement of different countries. 3. Talks in Moscow. In recent news, there were important talks in Moscow. A special envoy from the United States went to Russia for discussions. The main topic was a possible ceasefire in Ukraine. Russia had said before that they supported the idea of a ceasefire. However, they also said it was not simple. Russian President Putin spoke to reporters. He said that any ceasefire must deal with the main reasons for the conflict. He mentioned that many details needed to be agreed upon. At first, Russia did not seem to want a short ceasefire. They talked about wanting a long-term peace. Some people thought Russia's demands were very high. They seemed to want Ukraine to give up a lot. President Putin thanked the U.S. president for trying to end the war. The U.S. president said Russia's words were promising, but he also said more needed to be done. He hoped Russia would do the right thing. The U.S. envoy and Russian officials started serious talks in Moscow. They discussed the U.S. idea for a ceasefire. Ukraine had already said they agreed to the proposal. Some people believe Russia might be using these talks to gain time. They think Russia wants to take more land in Ukraine before any ceasefire. Russia still has demands that Ukraine does not agree with. Russia says the conflict is because of problems with the West. They say the West has not treated Russia fairly. Russia wants guarantees that Ukraine will not be used against them in the future. Even though talks are happening, it is not clear what will happen next. The positions of both sides are still changing. It is a complex situation with many issues to solve before a ceasefire or peace can happen. 4. Trump's role. Donald Trump has a big influence on the situation between Russia and Ukraine. He has a known relationship with the Russian president, Vladimir Putin. Because of this, what Trump says and does is very important. Trump has talked about the conflict many times. He has said he wants to be a peacemaker. He has even suggested ideas to end the fighting. One idea is a ceasefire, which means stopping the war temporarily. Russia has said they are interested in this idea. In principle, Trump's actions are seen as important because he might offer Russia something to stop the war. People are looking at how Trump dealt with North Korea in the past. With North Korea, Trump also tried to make a deal. Some think he might use a similar approach with Russia. This could mean giving Russia something they want in exchange for peace. For example, Trump might offer to improve relations with Russia, or he could agree to talk about Russia's concerns about security. These could be incentives, things that encourage Russia to stop fighting and make peace. Trump sent a special envoy, Steve Witkoff, to Moscow. This envoy is talking to Russian officials about the ceasefire proposal. These talks are serious and show that Trump is actively involved in trying to find a solution. Putin has said that Trump's ideas are very promising. However, Putin also wants to make sure any ceasefire is not just a short break in fighting. He wants it to lead to a long-term peace. Putin has many questions about how a ceasefire would work and what guarantees there would be. Some people are worried about Trump's approach. They think he might be too willing to give Russia what it wants. They are concerned that he might make a deal that is not good for Ukraine or for Europe. There is concern that Trump might focus on his personal relationship with Putin and less on the bigger issues of the conflict. However, others believe Trump's involvement is a chance for peace. They hope his direct approach and willingness to negotiate could lead to a breakthrough. They think that because Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker, he might be able to achieve something that others have not. It is still unclear exactly what Trump will do, but his role is definitely important. His past actions and his current efforts are being watched closely by everyone involved in the conflict, including Ukraine, Russia, and Europe. 5. Ukraine's view. From Ukraine, the situation looks difficult. For a long time, Ukrainians have been fighting for their land. They see the conflict as a fight for their freedom and future. When Ukrainian soldiers went into Kursk, inside Russia, it was for several reasons. One reason was to show that Russia was not safe from the war. Another was to show the world that Russia's threats were not always real. Also, Ukraine hoped to use this territory in talks later to get back Ukrainian land taken by Russia. However, things changed. Russian forces pushed back, sometimes with soldiers from North Korea. Then, the United States stopped sharing important information with Ukraine for a short time. This made it very hard for Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk because they could not see what was happening around them. When the U.S. started sharing information again, it was too late to keep control of much of the land in Kursk. Many people in Ukraine were not happy when Donald Trump was elected in the U.S. They worried about what this meant for the help Ukraine was getting. When the Ukrainian leader met with Trump, the meeting did not go well. Ukrainians felt that their leader was not respected. They felt the U.S. was asking too much of Ukraine. Many Ukrainians felt like they were being left alone to fight. In this difficult situation, technology has become very important for Ukraine. Drones, for example, are very useful. Ukraine has been very creative in using drones for different things, like finding enemy soldiers and attacking them. Because Ukraine did not always have enough weapons from other countries, they had to find new ways to fight. Drones became a key part of their defense. For Ukrainians who lived in areas taken by Russia, life was very hard. One Ukrainian woman called Barney lived in such an area. She saw how Russian soldiers treated people. Her family was hurt. Because of this, she decided to join the Ukrainian army and use drones against the Russian forces. She wanted to free the people still living under Russian control. She knew how hard it was to live with Russian propaganda and without true information. Looking to the future, Ukrainians know that getting back all their land will be very difficult. They say they will never agree to give their land to Russia permanently. But they also understand that it might take a long time to get it back. There are different opinions in Ukraine about deals with other countries, like a deal about minerals with the U.S. Some people think it could be helpful for security, while others worry that it is not fair to Ukraine. When there is talk of a ceasefire, Ukrainians are careful. They worry that Russia might use a ceasefire to get stronger and attack again later. They know that for peace to last, it must deal with the reasons for the conflict in the first place. Ukraine wants security guarantees so they can be safe in the future and not face more attacks from Russia. 6. The minerals deal. In recent times, there has been talk about a possible deal between the United States and Ukraine. This deal is about minerals. Ukraine has important minerals in its land. Some of these are rare earth minerals. These minerals are used to make many things, like phones and cars. The idea is that the U.S. could help Ukraine to get these minerals out of the ground. In return, the U.S. could get some of these minerals for themselves. This is called the minerals deal. One reporter went to a mine in Ukraine to learn more. This mine is called Verbit. It is in the center of Ukraine. People there have different ideas about this deal. Some people in Ukraine are not sure about the deal. They worry that it might not be good for Ukraine. One engineer at the mine said he would only agree if Ukraine gets security help from the U.S. This means Ukraine wants to feel safe if they make this deal. but other people think the deal could be good. The boss of the mining company thinks it could bring money to Ukraine. He says Ukraine needs a lot of money to get the minerals out. He believes that American companies could invest money and help Ukraine. It is also said that this deal could change. It might not just be about taking minerals out of Ukraine. It could become a fund to help Ukraine rebuild after the war. American companies could get contracts to help rebuild Ukraine. This way, Ukraine could benefit more from the deal. The mine in Ukraine is working, but it is not easy. Sometimes they do not have electricity because of the war. This stops them from working. Also, some of the minerals that Ukraine has are in areas that are dangerous because of the fighting. For example, a large place with lithium is near the front lines. People in Ukraine understand that getting minerals out of the ground needs a lot of money and work. They are thinking about whether this deal with the U.S. is the right way to do it. They want to make sure it is fair and helps Ukraine in the long run, especially with security in mind. 7. Europe's response. European countries watched the situation carefully. They were worried about what might happen. There were concerns that the United States, under President Trump, might make a deal with Russia without considering Europe's interests. Some feared that Europe could be left alone to face the problems caused by the conflict. Because of these worries, European defense ministers met in Paris. They talked about what Europe could do. One important result of these meetings was the idea of a coalition of the willing. This was a group of European countries that wanted to work together to help. The British Defense Secretary said that this coalition was gaining strength, with 34 countries involved. The main idea behind this coalition was to show support for Ukraine. There was talk about European troops possibly joining a peacekeeping force in the future. This force could help to keep peace if a ceasefire was agreed. Ukraine wanted European countries to be involved, as they felt Europe would strongly support them. However, Europe faced some big problems. One challenge was that European countries did not have strong air defenses on their own, like the United States. This made it difficult for them to send troops for peacekeeping without feeling secure. Another problem was Russia's opinion. Russia did not want European troops to be part of any peacekeeping force. Russia saw this as unwanted interference. Despite these challenges, the formation of the coalition of the willing was important. It showed that Europe was united and wanted to support Ukraine. Even if there were limits to what Europe could do alone, it was a clear sign of European countries taking responsibility for security in the region. This was seen as a necessary step for Europe to become stronger and more united in dealing with future problems. 8. The future. What will happen next in the conflict? It is difficult to say for sure, but we can look at some possibilities. One important question is peace. Is peace possible in the near future? Some people are talking about a ceasefire. A ceasefire is when the fighting stops for a while. Russia said they agree with a ceasefire idea in general, but they also said it must solve the main problems of the conflict. They want a ceasefire to lead to a long peace, not just a short stop in fighting. The United States also talked about a ceasefire. Mr. Trump called Russia's words about a ceasefire very promising, but he also said more work is needed. This shows that even if both sides talk about stopping the fighting, it is not easy to agree on how and why. It is not clear if a ceasefire will become a lasting peace. Russia has asked for many things to agree to peace. Some people think these demands are too much for Ukraine to accept. Ukraine wants its land back. Russia controls some parts of Ukraine now. What will happen to these areas? This is a big question for the future. There is also the worry about future fighting. Will Russia try to take more land later? Some people think Russia might attack again if they do not get what they want now. Ukraine needs to feel safe in the future. Security guarantees are very important for Ukraine. This means promises that other countries will help Ukraine if Russia attacks again. Europe is also thinking about the future. European countries are talking about working together to help keep peace. But there are challenges. It is not easy for Europe to agree on everything, and Russia may not want Europe to be involved. The future of this conflict is uncertain. Many things can change. It depends on what Russia, Ukraine, the United States, and Europe decide to do. It is a complex situation with many unknowns. We will need to wait and see what happens next.
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.